The rain had turned Ravenwood streets into slick mirrors of shadow and light, reflecting a town that whispered secrets behind every closed door. At the edge of the old mill, a storm drain gaped like a dark mouth, ignored by everyone but the curious. K9, a German shepherd with a nose that remembered more than people ever could, froze. His low, urgent growl cut through the drizzle, a warning and a plea all at once. Beneath the rusted grate, the faintest glimmer of something hidden stirred. Nobody knew what lay beneath, but K9 did. If you enjoy stories like this, a simple like and subscribe helps me bring more tales like it to life. The drizzle turned to a steady rain, each drop hammering the rusted rooftops and cracked asphalt of Ravenwood forgotten streets. Jacob Whitman pulled his coat tighter, the wool scraping against his neck, but offered little warmth. K9 padded silently beside him, ears pricked, eyes sharp. The dog's growl had begun faint, almost hesitant, but had grown urgent, sharp as a knife. Jacob glanced down at him, reading the tension in his rigid stance. The flare of nostrils, the flick of a tail that didn't wag. The old mill loomed ahead, a skeleton of timber and iron. Windows, long broken, reflected the storm in jagged shards. Locals called it abandoned. Jacob called it curiosity, a place that had swallowed his childhood memories, and perhaps secrets he didn't yet know he needed to find. "You've sniffed something, haven't you, boy?" Jacob muttered, rubbing the dog's neck. K9's hackles raised, the low rumble in his throat vibrating through the wet air. Something was down there, beneath the storm drain that everyone else treated like just another piece of forgotten infrastructure. He knelt beside the grated opening, peering down into darkness. Rainwater trickled past the edges, splashing onto the concrete with a soft hiss. At first glance, it was exactly what everyone said it was, a storm drain. But K9's intense focus told Jacob otherwise. He crouched lower, tracing the outline of the rusted grate with his fingers. It wasn't just a drain. The metal had faint scratches, almost like claw marks, or maybe something heavier had been dragged through. Jacob's stomach tightened. He should have ignored it. He should have turned back. But the pull of curiosity and the unshakable intensity in K9's gaze was irresistible. K9 barked sharply, a sound that cut through the rain and echoed against the mill's skeletal frame. Jacob jumped, heart pounding. The dog circled the grate, whining now, pawing at a particular corner. "What is it?" Jacob whispered. He didn't want to admit the flicker of fear in his chest. The weight of hair on the back of his neck stood on end. The town had whispered about old tunnels beneath Ravenwood for decades. Stories of hidden rooms, vanished townsfolk, and unsolved disappearances. Everyone dismissed them as legends. But maybe legends had a way of being true. Jacob found the old latch and pried at the grate. Rusted hinges groaned in protest, then gave way. K9 lunged forward, sniffing furiously at the opening. Cold, wares surged up from the darkness, carrying the faint metallic tang of something long buried. Jacob shivered. There was no turning back now. He lowered himself into the opening, K9 following closely, claws scraping against the concrete. The tunnel smelled of earth, mildew, and something else. Something faintly sweet, like decayed sugar. He flicked on a small flashlight, the beam cutting a narrow circle through the blackness. The walls were slick, covered in a mixture of grime and graffiti from decades ago. Odd symbols and initials were scratched into concrete, some deep, some shallow, but all worn by time. Jacob ran his fingers over them, feeling the grooves, feeling the weight of untold stories pressed into the very walls. K9 barked again, closer this time. Jacob swung the flashlight toward the sound and froze. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, a vaulted space he hadn't expected beneath the mill. Broken crates and rusted barrels littered the floor, shadows dancing in the flashlight beam. And in the corner, something gleamed, something metallic. Jacob approached cautiously, heart hammering in his chest. The closer he got, the more he realized it wasn't just a crate. It was a small chest, locked but not heavily. The metal was blackened with age, hinges corroded, and the lock was crude but intact. He knelt, brushing away the grime. K9 circled the chest, growling low and deep. Jacob's fingers traced the lock, pressing gently, listening for clicks or traps. A twist, a pull, and the lock yielded with a faint snap. The chest creaked open. Inside, he found stacks of old documents, yellowed and brittle with age, and a small, rusted key. Paper spilled over, maps of the town from decades ago, marked with symbols he didn't recognize, and a photograph of a young man standing in front of the mill, smiling, unaware of what lay beneath. Jacob's mind raced. He picked up the photograph, noting the familiar face. "This is Tommy Weller," he whispered. The man had disappeared 40 years ago. Everyone had assumed he ran away. But here he was, immortalized on paper in front of the very mill that had haunted the town for decades. K9’s bark startled him. The dog had moved toward a far corner of the chamber. Jacob followed, flashlight trembling in his hand. There, hidden under a pile of rubble, was another opening, a narrow tunnel that led deeper, too small for a grown man, but wide enough for K9. Jacob crouched, considering the risk. He couldn't go further, not yet. But K9's insistence made the choice clear. He needed to understand. The dog's nose had never led him astray. He took a deep breath, memorizing the details of the chamber, the position of crates, the smell of damp concrete. This wasn't just a storm drain. This was a gateway to something long buried, something the town had chosen to forget. As he backed out, carrying the documents and the key, the rain outside had intensified. The wind howled through the broken windows of the mill, and Jacob felt a cold, creeping sense of unease. Someone or something didn't want this uncovered. He climbed back into the wet night. K9 at his side, chest tight with anticipation and dread. Every step he took toward town was haunted by the thought that the storm drain was just the beginning. By the time they reached his small car, his hands were trembling from the cold and adrenaline. He set the chest on the passenger seat and patted K9's head. "We're not alone in this, buddy. Whatever's down there, we'll find it." K9 barked, short and sharp, as if agreeing. But Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that the dog was warning him. There was something far worse than a buried tunnel waiting beneath the rain-soaked streets of Ravenwood. As the headlights cut through the mist, Jacob's phone buzzed with a message from Claire, his sister. "You shouldn't be there. Some things are better left buried." He stared at the screen, the weight of her words pressing into his chest. She had always been the cautious one, the moral compass when his curiosity ran too wild. But her warning made the secret pull stronger, more urgent. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was survival. K9 whined, nudging his hand, pulling him back from spiraling thoughts. Jacob took a deep breath, gripping the steering wheel, glancing at the chest beside him. The tunnel of secrets wasn't just a mystery. It was a warning, a puzzle, and perhaps a threat. And someone had been waiting for him to uncover it. Jacob's car wove cautiously through the slick streets of Ravenwood. Street lamps flickered in the heavy rain, casting fractured light onto puddles that mirrored the stormy sky. K9 sat rigid in the passenger seat, ears swiveling at every creak of the old mill in the distance, as if sensing threats invisible to human eyes. The documents sprawled across the passenger floor whispered secrets in crumbling paper and faded ink. Jacob picked one up, a sketch of a tunnel system beneath the town. Lines intersected like veins, and tiny notations hinted at hidden rooms, secret entrances, and markings that matched those in the chamber beneath the mill. He traced them with a shaking finger, realizing the scale of what he'd uncovered. Ravenwood wasn't just a small town with forgotten streets. Beneath it lay a labyrinth, buried for decades, designed to remain invisible. He pulled into the driveway of his sister Claire's house, the familiar yellow light spilling warmth into the gray, rainy evening. The old Victorian house creaked and groaned as if it remembered every whispered argument, every long-forgotten secret shared in its rooms. Claire met him at the door, her expression sharp, eyes wary. "Jacob," she said, her voice firm but laced with worry. "I got your message. You went back there?" Jacob set the chest down gently. "It wasn't just a storm drain, Claire. K9, he found something. A tunnel. And there's more." He hesitated, the weight of the maps and documents heavy in his hands. "Someone wanted it hidden. I think it's connected to the old disappearances. The Weller boy, maybe even more." Claire's eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what you're stepping into. People die over curiosity in this town. You need to leave it alone. I can't, Jacob said, voice tight. I've never ignored K9 when he's warned me. This is different. It's bigger than any of us. K9 whined softly, brushing against Claire's leg. She bent down, studying him with a mix of apprehension and recognition. Even he knows, she muttered. He smells it, doesn't he? Jacob nodded. I have to follow it. But I need your help. I can't do this alone. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She was morally cautious, always thinking of consequences, yet he knew there was a part of her that craved the truth as much as he did. That part flickered now, unwilling to let the mystery remain buried. By midnight, they returned to the mill under the cover of a blackout. Jacob carried a backpack filled with ropes, flashlights, and supplies. Claire followed, flashlight in hand, her eyes darting nervously at the shadows dancing across the skeletal remains of the structure. The rain had stopped, leaving a damp fog that clung to every surface. K9 bounded ahead, nose to the ground. He paused at the chamber, pawing at the rubble where the narrow tunnel descended further. Jacob and Claire exchanged a glance. Neither spoke. Words felt insufficient in the face of what they were about to confront. Jacob knelt beside the opening, peering into the narrow, dark passage. The air was musty, tinged with a metallic scent of rust, and something older, something unidentifiable. He hesitated, the maps in his mind replaying the complex network beneath the town. Are you sure about this? Claire whispered. Jacob swallowed. We don't have a choice. Not if we want to know the truth. K9 slipped into the tunnel first, body low, ears forward. Jacob followed, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the oppressive blackness. The tunnel was tight, forcing him to crawl, the concrete walls damp and cold against his palms. Every step echoed, every sound magnified. The tunnel widened suddenly into another chamber, larger than the first. It was littered with old furniture, barrels, and boxes, covered in decades of dust. Jacob's flashlight revealed a faint outline of graffiti, symbols, initials, and strange diagrams etched into the walls, eerily similar to the maps they had found. Claire shivered. What is all this? Jacob didn't answer immediately. He was drawn to a crate in the corner, partially obscured by shadows. Inside, he found small vials, old journals, and several photographs. Faces he didn't recognize, some with eyes scratched out. The journals were meticulous, filled with names, dates, and what appeared to be experiments or observations. This isn't just a tunnel, Jacob whispered, flipping through a journal. Someone was hiding things here. People, records, secrets. Claire leaned closer, her voice trembling. Jacob, this is illegal. It's dangerous. We need to leave. K9 barked sharply, cutting to the tension, then padded toward a corner where the floor seemed uneven. Jacob followed. He knelt, brushing away debris to reveal a hidden hatch. The metal was cold and slick. He lifted it, revealing a stairwell spiraling downward into complete darkness. I think this goes deeper, Jacob said. Much deeper. A sudden noise, metal scraping against stone, made them freeze. The sound came from somewhere below. K9 growled low, hackles raised. Claire clutched his arm, her face pale. We're not alone, she whispered. They descended cautiously, flashlight beams cutting through the damp air. The stairwell opened into a cavernous chamber, walls carved from solid stone. Strange artifacts littered the ground, tools, old clothing, and fragmented journals that seemed centuries old. Jacob's pulse quickened as he realized the depth of what had been hidden beneath Ravenwood. Then they saw it. A figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in black, face obscured by a hood. They moved with deliberate silence. K9 barked ferociously, lunging forward, but the figure raised a hand, stopping the dog with a calm precision that was unnerving. Who are you? Jacob demanded, heart hammering. The figure tilted their head. Curiosity can be dangerous, they said softly, almost conversational, but the words carried an unmistakable threat. Some truths are buried for a reason. Claire stepped closer, voice trembling but firm. We only want answers. We didn't come to harm anyone. The figure paused, considering them. Then, with a sudden movement, they turned and disappeared into shadows of another tunnel. leaving behind a faint metallic scent and a sense of menace that made Jacob's skin crawl. Jacob swallowed hard. "We need to follow." Claire hesitated. "Are you insane? That person could be armed. Dangerous. We should call the authorities." Jacob shook his head. "No one can know. If they did, everything would be destroyed before we even got a chance." K9 barked, nudging forward, and they followed the figure deeper into the labyrinth beneath the town. The tunnels twisted and turned, the walls narrowing in places, then widening into hidden chambers. Each step revealed more artifacts, more documents, more proof that someone had spent decades hiding not just objects but lives. People who had disappeared without a trace. Hours passed. The tension was suffocating. Jacob and Claire were exhausted, yet they couldn't stop. Every corridor, every whisper movement, every echo in the tunnel network told them they were close to something monumental and dangerously close to the truth someone wanted buried. At the far end of the tunnel, they came upon a room illuminated by a flickering lantern. The walls were covered with photographs of missing townspeople, some dated decades ago, some recent. Notes were pinned beside them, names, dates, cryptic remarks about behaviors, patterns, and movements. Jacob's stomach churned. This is a record of every disappearance," he murmured. "They've been tracking people for years." Claire placed a hand on his arm. "We can't let them know we found this. We have to leave before." Before the sentence could finish, a voice echoed from the shadows. Calm, controlled, menacing. "You shouldn't be here." They froze. K9 growled low, body tense. From the shadows stepped a figure. Older now, face partially revealed, eyes sharp, calculating, and cold. Jacob recognized the face from one of the old photographs he had found earlier. The person he thought had vanished years ago was very much alive. Jacob's chest tightened. "Tommy Weller?" The man smiled faintly, a cold, humorless curve of lips. "Clever boy. You found what I hoped remained buried. But some secrets should never see the light of day." K9 barked violently, charging forward, but Tommy Weller raised a hand, and the dog stopped, growling in restrained fury. "You will regret this," Weller said softly, stepping closer. "Curiosity has a price. And you, Jacob Whitman, you've just begun to pay." The cold air of the hidden chamber clung to Jacob's skin, damp and oppressive. K9 growled low, his hackles raised, ears pinned forward. Claire's grip on Jacob's arm was iron-tight, trembling but determined. Across the room, Tommy Weller's eyes gleamed in the lantern light. Sharp, unblinking, and unervingly calm. "You shouldn't have come here," Weller said again, his voice a whisper of authority and menace. "Some doors are meant to stay closed." Jacob swallowed, the taste of fear bitter in his mouth. "We're not leaving until we know the truth," he said. "All of it." A faint smirk curved Weller's lips. "All of it? Curiosity kills, Jacob. Or in this case, it buries." Claire stepped forward. "We've seen the records. We've seen what you've been doing. People didn't just disappear by accident. You've been hiding them down here, manipulating the town for decades." Weller tilted his head, amused. "Manipulating? No, Claire. Protecting. Protecting secrets that should never have been uncovered. You have no idea what's out there. You have no idea what the world would do if the tunnel's history got out." Jacob's hands clenched into fists. "So you just kidnap them? Watch them? Keep them like prisoners?" Weller's gaze softened ever so slightly, a shadow of remorse flickering behind his otherwise cold demeanor. "I keep them alive. Not all survive outside these walls. Ravenwood, this town was never safe. I saved them. From themselves, from others, from chaos that would consume everything." Claire's face twisted in disbelief. "You call this saving?" The tension crackled like static in the damp air. K9 barked, breaking the momentary lull, a sharp, urgent sound that sliced through Weller's calm. The man's eyes followed the dog, a hint of irritation surfacing. "You're just like the others," Weller muttered. "Blind to the sacrifices I've made. You think the world is simple. It isn't. Not anymore." Suddenly, a noise from behind, a faint shuffle, made Jacob spin. Another figure emerged from a narrow tunnel. Claire gasped. A young woman, gaunt and wary, stepped into the light. Her eyes were haunted, hollow, but filled with recognition at the sight of K9. "Lena?" Jacob whispered, stunned. The woman nodded, tears streaking the grime on her face. "I thought no one would find me," she said softly. "I've been here years. They said I was forgotten by the world." Claire's hand went to her mouth. "You're alive?" "Yes," Lena said, voice trembling. "Alive because of him, but trapped because of him too." Her gaze shifted to Weller. "He saved me from the outside, but he made me his prisoner." Weller's eyes darkened. "Enough." Jacob's mind raced. He had expected danger, perhaps even death, but he hadn't expected moral ambiguity. Not on this scale. Weller had saved lives, but at the cost of freedom. And now, Jacob and Claire were trapped in the moral maze, forced to confront questions without clear answers. K9 barked again, nudging Jacob toward a small, crumbling staircase leading to a secondary tunnel. Jacob understood immediately. The dog was guiding him, signaling a way out or a path forward to confront the truth hidden deeper. "Jacob, wait!" Claire shouted. He hesitated, looking at Lena, her thin frame silhouetted in the flickering light. "I can't leave her here," he said. "She'll come with us," Lena whispered. "But we have to move now." He's losing patience." Weller's voice echoed, icy and calm. "You cannot leave, not with her, not with anything." The standoff felt eternal. K9 growled, pacing, then darted forward, signaling the way. Jacob nodded to Claire and Lena. They moved silently, each step a mix of fear and determination, guided by the dog's instincts. The secondary tunnel led to a steep drop. A rope ladder hung from the ceiling, frayed but intact. Jacob tested it with a cautious tug. It held. One by one, they descended into the darkness below. The smell of damp earth intensified, and water dripped from the ceiling onto their backs. Halfway down, a low rumble shook the tunnel. Dust and small pebbles cascaded around them. Weller's shout echoed above. "You cannot escape. You don't understand what you've unleashed." Jacob's grip tightened. "We'll find out." They landed in a subterranean stream, the water cold and knee-deep. K9 splashed ahead, sensing the safest path. Jacob followed, helping Claire, and then Lena across the shifting rocks. The narrow passage twisted and narrowed, forcing them to crawl, then wade until finally they emerged into a chamber bathed in dim, natural light. A hidden exit, obscured by overgrown vines, leading to the forest beyond the town. They paused outside, lungs heaving, hearts pounding. The forest was quiet, almost serene, a stark contrast to the suffocating tension of the tunnels. Jacob looked back toward the mill, hidden behind the fog. "They can't follow us here," he said, voice low, almost reverent. Claire embraced Lena, trembling. "You're safe now. We're taking you home." K9 barked, circling them, then lay down, tail thumping softly against the damp earth. Jacob knelt beside him, rubbing his fur. "Good boy. You led us right." For a long moment, the three humans and one dog stood in silence, absorbing the magnitude of what they had uncovered. Decades of hidden lives, a morally gray savior whose methods defied conscience, and a town built on secrets that were never meant to surface. But the story didn't end with confrontation. It ended with choices. Jacob turned to Claire and Lena. "We tell people or we keep it buried. What we do now changes everything." Claire looked at him, eyes reflecting the storm of doubt and responsibility. "We can't bury it again," she said finally. "Not after seeing the truth. But we need to be careful. The wrong people knowing could make things worse." Lena nodded, fear and relief mingling. "I just want my life back. Freedom. I want to choose." Jacob exhaled, letting the damp air fill his lungs. "Then we start slow. We uncover it carefully. Expose the truth, but protect the innocent." K9 barked, as if in agreement. Jacob smiled faintly. The dog had guided them through danger, through fear, through moral ambiguity, and now he stood as a silent sentinel over survivors, the keeper of instincts that humans often ignored. The journey back through the forest was slow, careful. Every step reminded them of what they had faced, and what could still be lurking in the shadows. But each step also carried hope. The fragile, hard-won hope of life reclaimed and secrets revealed. By the time they reached Claire's car, dawn was breaking over Ravenwood. The first rays of sunlight filtered through mist, glinting on wet leaves. It was quiet, too quiet, but for the first time in decades, the town beneath them felt slightly less haunted. Jacob turned to Claire. "We survived, but this changes us, changes everyone involved." She nodded. "It has to. Some truths are painful, but they also set you free." Lena glanced at K9, kneeling beside him. "I don't even know how to thank him. He saved my life more than anyone else." Jacob reached out, placing a hand on K9's head. The dog leaned into him, calm, alert, aware that the storm had passed, yet ready for the unknown. And somewhere beneath the layers of Ravenwood, in the tunnels, the echoes of the past remained. But for now, the living had claimed their place in the light. Jacob Whitman, Claire, Lena, and K9 drove slowly into town, the chest of secrets left behind, the maps and journals safely secured. They would decide carefully who needed to know. They would confront the world, but with wisdom tempered by terror, courage, and moral clarity. Some doors should never have been opened, but some, once opened, demanded that the truth be faced. And for Jacob, K9, and those who survived the hidden tunnels of Ravenwood, the truth was not just a story. It was a responsibility, a burden, and a fragile hope for redemption. The town would never be the same. Neither would they. But in that quiet dawn, with the mist rising and K9's steady gaze fixed forward, they felt it. The heavy weight of secrets lifted just enough for the world to breathe again.